It had been a long week, and I was looking forward to relaxing at home with a cold beer and maybe a pizza. I set my suitcase by the door and wandered into the kitchen for my first beer. The house seemed unusually quiet as I opened the lid of the Budweiser Light. That's when I realized the damn dog wasn't around. That was pretty unusual. Usually she met me at the door, growling and threatening me with bared fangs. I started carrying treats in my pocket to coax her into letting me into my house. Why did I have a dog that almost hated me? I pondered this situation, searching with my eyes for the dog. I remembered the day about 6 weeks ago when my wife brought a dog into the house. "This is Margie. She's Tim's bitch, but we're going to keep her with us for a while. When you get to know her better, you'll realize she's actually cute," my loving wife insisted as the dog sniffed my leg. I suppose the obvious question is, why? If I wanted a dog, I would have gotten a Labrador, I muttered, kicking the dog to move it away from my ankle. "Margie, yee," my wife Margaret commanded as our guest clenched my calf rather hard with her teeth. At Margaret's command, she let go of me, but kept her muzzle uncomfortably close to my now bleeding calf. "Tim has trained her very well. She obeys me beautifully. I think I'll feel safer with her, especially at night." "Why the hell doesn't Tim keep her at his house?" I asked, lifting the cuff of my pants to examine the puncture wounds on my leg. "I don't want that mutt staying here. She bit me, for God's sake." "She won't bother you if you're polite. Tim says pit bulls only got a bad reputation because of a few jerks who didn't train their dogs properly. He can't keep her at his place because he has an adult male dog." This morning he was about to get on Margie when Tim stopped him. He said it would be best to keep them separate until the bitch grows up. He'll decide when he feels Margie is ready. "I don't see why we have to keep that damn vicious dog in the house just because your boss is stupid enough to have both male and female pit bulls." "Tell Tim I'm against it," I demanded. "Well, you kicked it, and Margie was on it so fast you didn't even realize it." Margaret grinned. "The dog stays. I promised Tim we'd take care of her." Thus began another reign of terror by another lousy bitch in my house. I had to be careful not to make any quick moves or get too close to my wife. The dog was watching me the whole time. She seemed to be waiting for me to stumble and give her an excuse to bite me. I was practically a prisoner in my own home. I took a sip of beer and looked all around the downstairs but found no sign of the dog. My wife wasn't answering my calls either. When I got to the master bathroom, things began to clear up. The floor was covered in dried blood. There were numerous places where the blood had spread almost a couple of feet up the wall. I looked around and found a small bag next to my side of the bed. It contained someone else's male toiletries and clothes. There were bloody footprints on the carpet and a fair amount of bloodstains on the crumpled bed. My beer was almost out, so I went downstairs for the next one. As I popped the cap off, the doorbell rang. I opened the door and saw a tastelessly dressed man in a cheap suit. "Mr. Moore, may I come in and ask you a few questions? I'm Detective Cook. This won't take long." "Are you with Interpol?" I asked quickly. "No, and I don't care about copied DVDs. I'm trying to get to the bottom of the brutal attack that took place here this morning." "Well, if you say so, come on in. Aren't you the cop who solved Robert Morgan's murder? The one who was killed by a guy who thought Morgan was sleeping with his wife, when in fact Morgan's wife, and the killer's wife, was being had by another guy, out of revenge, because they were both sleeping with his wife?" I asked, remembering the bizarre situation that all the local papers were reporting on. "I didn't quite solve it, but I played an important role in the investigation," the detective admitted modestly. "Right now, I'm more interested in the brutal attack that took place in your bathroom this morning. I assumed you wouldn't be back until tomorrow." "Yes, that was my original plan, but I finished my business early and flew in this morning." "How did you find out about my travel plans and what exactly happened here this morning?" I asked the detective. "The only thing I've learned is not to ask 2 questions at once," the detective grinned, remembering the old days. "Besides, I'm the one asking the questions here. How long have you had a vicious dog?" "I've never had a vicious dog." "You don't think that damn pit bull bitch you had was vicious? What the hell kind of guy are you?" the detective asked. "That's 2 issues," I remarked. "Damn pit bulls are vicious as hell, and I'm pretty objective right now. But if pit bulls are vicious, what makes you think your dog isn't? Is she half Rottweiler?" a flustered police officer asked. "Again, 2 questions. It seems to have become a habit with you." I remarked calmly. I don't have a dog. That should answer both questions. So what the hell chewed the shit out of this guy today? A cockroach? Shouted Cook, and his face turned bright red and sweat broke out on his forehead. 2 questions again? You can't get rid of that habit, can you? I laughed. Since I wasn't here and I have no idea what you're talking about, I can't answer any of them, although I'm pretty sure all the cockroaches in this neighborhood are pretty small and meek. Motherfucker! Yelled the detective. Why am I getting all these assholes? Why can't I get a normal case with normal people? Those 2 questions are rhetorical, aren't they? I replied with a chuckle. Listen to me, smartass. I want straight answers to my questions. No more games or I'll drag you to the station to continue, objected the policeman, pulling a pill container out of his pocket and taking out a couple of small capsules. Why don't you just ask me a straight question, without including any of your opinions or observations? You want to know about the poor fucking dog that lives at this address? I fired back at the red-faced detective. Yes, you admit you have a dog? Cook replied with evident relief. No, I don't. You're not very good at asking follow-up questions, are you? Son of a bitch, squealed the detective so that his saliva splattered all over the kitchen. To answer the question you can't seem to ask. It was my wife who groomed the nasty bitch belonging to her boss, Tim Conrad, I said quietly, wiping the foam off the detective's forehead. It wasn't my dog, and I hated her almost as much as she hated me. Understanding slowly dawned on Cook's face. So you had that miserable mean bitch living in your house? Yes, and she insisted on keeping the dog, so there wasn't much I could do, I answered when my companion showed signs of agitation again. Did you know that Conrad had a sexual relationship with your wife? The detective asked almost cheerfully. I actually guessed it when Margaret came home with a bitch named Margie that her boss was going to use for breeding, sensing it was time. There was a lot of symbolism there that made it pretty obvious. They must have decided it was a good joke. That must have pissed you off big time, Cook insisted. Not exactly. I decided to make the best of the situation I was in. It seems to have worked out pretty well, at least for me, I added. Tell me, how could you make the best of the fact that your wife was sleeping with her boss, forcing you to live with a fucking rabid bitch? Demanded the burly detective. I quickly realized that the dog had no qualms about biting me. I also noticed that she sniffed my modest genitals every time I got out of the shower. This was a major source of anxiety for me. It also made me wonder, if the bitch was interested in my humble product, how would she react to a larger specimen? About 4 weeks ago, I bought a large box of wieners at Sam's Club. I took one of them with me in the shower under a towel so the dog wouldn't see it. Every time I got out of the shower, I held it up to my crotch, pretending it was Margie's big, real penis, each time snatching it in 2 bites. It became a habit we did every morning. I think the dog was starting to like me. Oh, shit. And what did your wife think of this training? Asked the squeamish detective. I always showered in the morning while she was still asleep, so she just didn't see anything. I was hoping to surprise her someday, I admitted. I bet you did. Did you happen to know that Mr. Conrad was gifted with an unusually large phallus? Not really, but I suspected it. The last few times I had carnal relations with my wife, it felt like Holland's Tunnel, I admitted with some embarrassment. Did it ever occur to you that if your wife has a lover, and if she leaves him overnight at her place, and he showers in your bathroom, and if the dog is around, the poor guy's wiener might be at risk? No, that never occurred to me, I replied innocently. Did it have anything to do with what happened this morning? Yeah, the dog bit off the guy's wiener and swallowed it. They killed the dog to get the guy's dick out, but it was too damaged to use. Now the dog is dead. The guy has a 5-inch penis, and your wife has been exposed as a cheater. What the hell do you think of that fucked up situation? I guess you already know the answer to that question, I replied with a hearty laugh.